So I finished the First Law by Joe Abercrombie, the final book, the last argument. Last Argument of Kings. Yeah, what an amazing ending! What a really, really good ending for a book, for a series, for the book and series. So I guess I'm going to talk about sort of the series as a whole, and not so much go through all the plot points in this one book. But we'll see. Where do I even start? So, I mean, the series was very character driven, right? It was all about the characters. He took a world that is very sort of generic, I'll say, very familiar, very tropey fantasy world, and threw in these characters and made it all about these characters, and didn't even, like, the characters themselves aren't like, there's no one character that, wow, they're a great person, or what, they're a really good guy, or they're the protagonist. They are the one that is doing right, and like, all of these characters are awful, awful, horrible people, but we don't hate any of them. I don't think. At least I didn't. They just seemed like normal people. Like, there was some good, there was some bad. They just seemed very real. I liked quite a few of them, despite the child murder, and like at the end there was like blackmailing a woman into rape, like with the queen, and blocked blackmailing her because she was she's gay, and she didn't want to hook up with Giselle, her husband, but so he stole her girlfriend and was like, we're gonna torture your girlfriend to death, and like threatened to like gang rape her girlfriend unless she slept with the king. Like, that's horrible, horrible stuff. And yet I'm still like, I think Glockta's my favorite character. Sand's really cool. Like, maybe that says something awful about me, but I think hopefully it says more about how amazing the series is. And the ending, I just can't get over the ending. So the first half of this book is sort of the war in the north, dealing with that. Marshal West, he's now in charge of the whole army. He manages to get some of those more of the Northmen sort of come over to his side, and he uses all his forces and all his wits to sort of push the Northmen out, go to their sort of capital, their big town, and Logan shows up, and we do have a very nice reunion with Logan and all of his friends. So Logan challenges Bethod, the big bad, to single combat, and so Bethod sends out the Feared, like this big sort of, I guess he's immortal. I don't really remember his backstory, but like this guy who's like, he wears plate armor on one side, and the other side he's like tattooed with like runes that protect him, and they were like tattooed by Glustrod 1,000 years ago, and I don't know how he's still alive. But anyways, so Logan fights him, the Bloody Nine takes over, and he's about to lose, but 3 of his friends have snuck into the town and killed the witch who was like powering the Feared. And so because they assassinate the witch, Logan's able to kill the Feared, and then he wins, which he goes up and then kills Bethod, throws Bethod off the walls, and Logan becomes proclaimed King of the North, even though he clearly does not want it. Nobody else really wants him to be it, but he is. Logan's character is interesting in this book, because when we have his POV, he seems like a nice guy just trying to do what he can. He's like, you got to be realistic about things, but he's trying to be better. He's trying to do the right thing. But anytime we see him from anyone else's POV, it's like, he is an evil, evil guy. Like, that guy is horrible. Like, why are we following this guy? We gotta get rid of this guy. Anyways, so it's just interesting. Like, some of the stuff Logan says when we don't see his POV and see his thought process behind what he's saying, it's like, yeah, geez, Logan, you're like, you're an evil, violent, bad dude. Um, but like in the second book, Logan seems like he's like the nicest. The like even in this book, Giselle, I want to call him Giselle, whatever his name is, the king, which we'll get to. He says to Luther like, wow, he says to Logan, he's like, yeah, you're the best man I know. You're like the guy. Um, so yeah, very interesting. So that was the first half of the book, is like dealing with the art of the war in the north, and then Giselle and Glokta in the capital. Glokta's dealing with trying to rig this election because the king has died, the king's heirs have died, and so they're like, who's going to be king next? We have to vote in a new king, and this is when Baez sort of pulls some strings, and he sort of had this plan all along that he makes Giselle the new king, which, like, no surprise there. And he claims that Giselle was actually a bastard, the previous king's bastard, and Baez had like hidden him away and raised him with a noble family for this specific purpose. And it's like, oh wow, he's had this plan all along. Until we find out at the end, he's like, no, you were just some random son of a whore that I bought for like very cheap, and like I had a ton of kids your age that I like sort of planted here and there to see which one would be the most useful for me to put on the throne as a puppet. Baez's character, like in the first book, I'm like, what is this quirky wizard? Wow, he doesn't sort of fit the stereotype. Very cool. In the second book, I'm like, this guy's not so great. In the third book, it's like, yeah, Baez is like the super evil wizard who wants to take over the world, and gets to, kind of, almost, not quite, but yeah. Anyways, that's the first half of the book. Giselle becomes proclaimed king, and sort of all the character development in the second book, where he grew and he became a better person, that sort of just like went away in this third book. The third book's it's so neat because we'll get to the end, but the plot sort of comes to its climax and then its conclusion, and the story resolves, and it's ended, it's done. But the stories of the individual characters, and remember, this is a very character driven book, the stories of the individual characters do not end. They, like in normal life, after some big event, your life doesn't just end or go back to normal. Like, life continues, and for each of these characters, life continue, well, the ones that survive, life continues, and none of them get a happy ending, except for maybe Glokta. I think Glokta gets, as much of a happy ending as anyone, maybe just because his standards are so low, or he expects so little. Yeah, the ending was amazing. But anyways, the second half is, of course, the Gurkish have invaded Middenland, whatever, Adua, and the Gurkish are slowly closing in on the capital. They're like destroying everything in their path. Marshal West and the army that have just won up north, along with Logan and some of the Northmen, are coming down to try and relieve them, and it's a bit of a race of, will the capital hold out in time for the army to arrive. Meanwhile, Baez and Pharaoh has discovered that the seed was actually inside the Tower of the Maker this whole time. And there is a bit of a twist, at that point. So Master Kwai, Baez's apprentice, that I was like, who is this? Turns out he died in like the first book, I think, before they left out west, and it was Ptolemy, Canidius's daughter, who was supposedly killed by Baez. Turns out when she was killed, she like contacted the other side and came back to life, and so she's been masquerading as Baez's apprentice this whole time. So when they go into the house of the Master Maker and they find the seed, Ptolemy reveals herself and starts a big wizard battle with Yulway's there and Baez. Pharaoh grabs the seed, manages to escape, and like locks it in its case. But Baez and Yulway, or Baez like leaves Yulway to sort of fight an eternal battle with Ptolemy, or maybe sacrifices Yulway to fight Ptolemy, and like Ptolemy ends up getting locked inside the tower. But Baez escapes, and he's like, "Holy cow, we got the magical super battery, the seed." And so he sets up this sort of arcane runes and circles and whatnot in the middle of the city. And he's going to do the same thing Glustrad did to the capital of the Roman Empire, Alculus or whatever it was, Alcus. But he's like the hubris. He's like, I can do what Glustrad did because I also have the knowledge of Juvens and of the Master Maker, and I'm greater than all three, and I'm going to use this power to defeat all my enemies. Because his sort of enemies is this prophet Kalul, who is one of the other apprentices of Juvens, who has turned evil and has his apprentice Mamun and 100 words, they call them, these 100 people who have broken the second law, which is not to eat the flesh of humans because that gives you magical powers. Anyway, so there's all these eaters that are coming against Baez. But they claim that it was Baez who killed Juvens, and like he's the real bad guy. And it is revealed that Baez killed Juvens, and then told everyone that Canidas killed Juvens. So then he got everyone, and then he killed Canidas, and then he killed Canidas's daughter Ptolemy, and he did all this just to sort of for his own personal advancement. So he's the bad guy, but also this Kalul guy, he's not the good guy because like he's using slaves. He's like gathering slaves and killing them and feeding them to his like apprentices. So yeah, no one's good in this novel, in this series, in this world. So that's the second half of the book, and the ending is like amazing. So West shows up in time, the Northmen, and they manage to relieve the siege on the city. I forgot, I didn't talk about the siege up north. So one of the battles was the Northmen sort of went into this sort of fast in the mountains, hold fast, steadfast, fastness. I don't know. They're up like in a fort in the mountains, and they sort of barricade themselves in there, and they're trapped. So Bethod takes the bait and uses it as his chance to wipe them out. And that's when West gets promoted, when Burr dies, and West goes and relieves them, and that's when they crush the Northern Army. And during this, Logan, like the Bloody Nine, awakens in Logan, and Logan, he kills Taldaru Thunderhead, is like one of his best friends. He also kills this child. So yeah, not a great guy. But anyways, back in Adua, in the capital, the West comes, relieves the siege, and they manage to chase the army out, and sort of the day is won. However, the city is in ruin from the siege, but also because Baez, all these 100 eaters show up to attack Baez. And Baez breaks the first law by touching the other side. He uses the seed as like a battery and like wields crazy power and kills all of the 100. But also like it sort of rejuvenates him. Like he looks so much younger now. And Pharaoh's there with the seed, and she just keeps hearing voices and people from the other side, demons from the other side saying like, free us, unlock the gates, throw wide the gates, whatever. So her story ends with, like, it's kind of hinting that, oh, she's going to, like, unleash the demons back into the world, and oh no, what's going to happen? But she's just like, no, I've been a slave. People telling me to do things, I'm never going to do them. So she, like, leaves the city and goes south to the Empire to get her own revenge. She's like kind of super powered up, magically powered up by her contact with the seed also. There is one scene where Logan, who is in the city after the battle, goes into Pharaoh's room and is like, hey, you know how we kind of like broke up? Well, what if we didn't? But she's just like, don't you hear these voices? Like, there's demons like super close by, like they're trying to break through, and he's like, so we should be together again, don't you think? Like, what about us? And she's like, dude, no, listen, there's demons out there. And he's like, I guess she doesn't want me, and leaves. It's such a weird scene. I don't think it's particularly well written because Logan's like totally ignoring her and she's totally ignoring him. But yeah, anyway, so she flees south. Logan's thing after the battle is, um, so during this battle, Harding Grim dies. Black Dow stayed up north, so the only one left is Dogman, and like the final moments is basically Dogman and Logan falling apart. They were like the best of friends, the closest of the close, but after this, Dogman's like, why are we doing this? You're just murdering people. You killed Taldaru. You killed a child. Like, why did you take us down here? And like you said, this was going to be your last fight, and now you're telling me that I have to stay here and try and negotiate an alliance so that we can continue to fight. And so one of the other Northmen comes over and he's like, man, that Bloody Nine, we got to do something about him. He's not good. And like Dogman like loses it and is like, how dare you? Like, what are you talking about? He's my best friend, sort of, but he's not. I don't know. Their friendship's like done. So anyway, end of Logan's stories. He goes back up north. Black Dow is there, and he had hunted down Bethod's two sons, but it turns out he's like started talking with them, and he's there. They all agree we got to get rid of the Bloody Nine. So there's a big fight between Black Dow, Logan, and Bethod's two sons, and it ends with Logan not being able to defeat any of them. So he sees an open window and he runs towards it and jumps out this window and falls to the freezing cold river. And it sort of very much mirrors the opening of the series. And it's up to interpretation whether Logan lives or dies. Presumably he lived. So that's like the end. That's how they end it, so that it sort of full circle matches how the book, the series opens. Jazal goes back to being a stupid, just a dumb kid. So he's the king, and he thinks like, I'm going to be a good king, and I'm going to help my people out, and like I'm going to do what needs doing, and I'm going to be down there in the rubble, clearing it myself, and doing all this stuff. And before Baez leaves the city, he says like, okay, Jazal, you're my puppet now. Like, you're gonna obey me and do whatever I say. Jazal's like, no, I'm the king. I'm the High King of the Union. I'll do whatever I want. So Baez like tortures him magically by putting him in immense pain. He's like, no, you're going to obey me. And so Jazal's like, okay, yes, I will. So then Baez leaves, and Baez is like just thrilled about this whole situation. He is just ecstatic. He's like, yeah, everything went well. I'm great. I'm super powerful. I'm more powerful than anyone's ever been. This is great. And he's like, magic is leaving this world, so now the wars will be fought with money. And it's basically him, Juvens, Baez, and Khalul are sort of set up against each other, and one's using the Gurkish, one's using the Union. As their own sort of proxy armies to fight each other. And Baez is thrilled about this outcome. He's like, all right, I'm out. I came here, I solved this crisis, I get super powerful, I'm going to go back now. But, Jazal, you're going to do exactly what I say. Glokta, you're in charge. Everyone, obey Glokta, or I'll kill you all. Glokta, you obey me, or else. So Glokta, he's sort of had this, he's been on this investigation, like, because he had the bank on him, trying to get him to spy on the Archlector, and then the Archlector's on him about trying to deal with the bank. And he said he had too many masters, so he hatched a plan to sort of solve this whole thing, and he manages to solve it all. And it turns out that Baez is the one behind the bank. The bank is Baez. And the Archlector was like summoning demons in the library in an attempt to overthrow the High Justice, his like rival on the closed council, and it was sort of like small beans. But anyways, so Glokta, using the money that he had, hired his mercenary and a bunch of goons, and they sort of, during the battle, captured the Archlector and killed some of the members of the university. And anyway, so Glokta has become the new Archlector, head of the Inquisition, but he is like the one running the kingdom now, at Baez's behest. So like I said, he sort of comes out of it all right. He also gets to marry Artie West, because Artie's pregnant with Gisele's kid, and they're like, we've got a bastard king. We can't have our bastard king having a bastard, because he's not sleeping with his wife, because his wife's gay and is like hates him. So they're like, that's an issue. We got to kill Artie. So Glokta's like, okay, I'll deal with it. Marries Artie, and then says, no one ever lay a hand on my wife and our child. So that's and honestly, their like messed up relationship, Artie and Sand, it works for them. Like, Glokta has never like had anything other than immense pain, so him having this like is kind of good for him. And like I said, there's a weird rape thing at the end where Glokta goes to the queen and is like, you're not sleeping with your husband, we need heirs. And he realizes, oh, that's because you're sleeping with your childhood friend, this your like lady in waiting. So he's like, okay, we're gonna capture her and take her to the dungeons, and I'm gonna have all of my practicals work away at her, and we'll keep her busy day and night until you start producing heirs. And so she goes and starts sleeping with Giselle, and Giselle's, because he's so stupid, he's like, wow, she really warmed up to me. She was actually just really shy because she's a virgin, and she really likes me now, and this is great. My life's great, but I still have to like watch out for Baez. Anyways, it's just like basically not a happy ending at all for anyone except for Baez, who's like an evil arch wizard. And maybe for Glokta, but even it's not a happy ending for him because he's never going to be happy again. He's utterly and absolutely miserable and constantly in pain. And still is serving someone, and it doesn't have his freedom. But anyways, just that ending I just thought was incredible, because it was a good ending in that the plot and story resolved itself. Like, the kingdom was saved, life goes on, Bethod was destroyed, and the north is back to the way it used to be. But for a character driven story, every single one of our characters just ends horribly. And like, they say things in it like, sometimes you don't always get what you deserve, or because like bad people are getting rewarded and good people are not getting rewarded. But yeah, it just ends horribly for everyone involved. And I thought that was wonderful. It was I don't know if cathartic's the word, but it was really, really enjoyable final quarter. And it's kind of set up like for another series. I think there are other books written in this world. I'm not entirely sure, but I mean, there's still a conflict, like Khalul and Baez. Pharaoh's off down south. We've got Glokta and Giselle. Logan potentially still alive. Yeah, there was another full circle thing where Glokta, Sergeant Pike. Turns out Pike, it was Ruse, the guy that Glokta had, like the innocent guy that Glokta had tortured and sent up north in the first book. And he sort of reveals himself to Glokta at the end, and he's going to kill Glokta. And Glokta's like, okay, it's finally happening. All right, you got me. But then Glokta's like, not begging for his life, because he does not care about his life at all. But he's like, tell you what, I got the old Archlector. I got Salt down in the dungeons. You want we could just go torture him. Like, I don't need any information from him. He's presumed dead, so everyone thinks he's dead. But I got him locked up. Like, we could just like go down and torture him for our amusement. Like, it literally says for our amusement. So they do. So there's Pike is sort of like Glokta's right hand man. And now I would assume if there was a second trilogy. Yeah. Anyways, what a it's so different, this series. It's very very different. It's set in a very typical world, so it's easy to get into and easy to understand, but it's just so different, but so enjoyable. So yeah, that was a really good series. That was The First Law by Joe Abercrombie. It was a good one.